my dear Sitecore family. So today we have Chirag Khanna with us. Chirag has been working at Horizontal for what, like 3 years?
Yes, somewhere around 3 years.
Yeah, and he works in the capacity of a technology lead here. And apart from that, he has been very active in the Sitecore community. Like if you go to Sitecore Stack Exchange, you will find any answer on a question regardless of the technology on Sitecore, an answer from him. Apart from that, if I really talk of his technology passion and skills, he is certified in all the Sitecore technologies along with other certifications and things also available. Recent one being he cleared the beta certification for Content Hub as well for developers. He writes amazing blogs and is a very solution oriented person. Apart from that, he has also been giving webinars. We did 2 SUPCon presentations together and a number of other webinars in the last 2 years. And that's about it. Today we will be discussing about basic terminologies of Sitecore CDP. So let's get started. So Chirag, thank you for being on Sitecore Tech Talks. And let's get started with the basic terminologies of Sitecore CDP. Where would you like to start?
First of all, thanks for giving me this opportunity. So whenever we work on CDP, right? So we need to first understand, right? What's the use case of CDP, right? Because of the product, how it can be helpful to you and how it will help your customers, right?
Sure.
So as a CDP, right? So it's a customer data platform. Okay. So in this, whenever the data is stored, it's a kind of a unified data platform. So by what I mean by unified data platform is because your guest might be coming from some different channels, web, mobile, Salesforce, CRM, right? It can be coming from different kind of channels,
right?
And we would like to get a unified view. We don't want to have a different kind of views for that, and we want to have a single view where we can see all the data from the different kind of channels and merge all this data.
Kind of a 360 view.
Kind of a 360 degree view in a single platform we can get. So that's why the use case of CDP comes, and we can store this data in CDP and then use it for further use cases like Sitecore Personalize, Sitecore Batch Segmentation and other use cases.
Okay. So I think what you mentioned is about a person who comes through various channels.
Right.
So what as a concept or as a terminology, what is that called in CDP?
So whenever the guest comes from a different channels, right? So first of all, whenever the guest comes, it can be treated as whenever your user visits your website, right? It will be anonymous visitor, right? So because he's just come to your website and you have no kind of identification right now,
correct,
right? He will be anonymous. Now when the guest, then suppose your guest logs in to your website using his account number, or might be an email, or might be some other kind of identification, right? Which basically identifies that person, right? In that case, the guest stored in CDP becomes from anonymous to the customer, because now in that case we know this user has been identified using an email or his account number, so that his profile automatically gets transmitted from anonymous to a customer, right?
Anonymous is called visitor, right?
Anonymous is called a visitor. It's basically any kind of users visiting your website will be anonymous. But whenever the user logs into your website or do any kind of identification, then he will become a customer. And what happens whenever the user becomes a customer, right? So his anonymous profile gets retired, right? And the new profile gets created for a customer. And same, now you meant from different channels, user might be coming, right? So now how it gets merged in CDP, right? Because now what happens is as I mentioned, right, the main use case of CDP is a unified data platform where we get a single view of the guest coming from all different channels, right? So what happens is Sitecore CDP has different kind of identifications which we can set, identification rules which we can set in CDP to basically identify the users coming from different channels. So suppose your website has a login from CRM, he might be having a CRM number. And suppose your second website have a login from Salesforce, so you might have a second Salesforce number, right? So in this case, you have two kind of identifications from your system. One is like CRM ID, another is a Salesforce ID. So what happens is, like, what we can do is in CDP, we can set two identification rules. One is the CRM ID, and second is the Salesforce ID, right?
And then these rules will help us identify that anonymous visitor into a customer.
Anonymous. So so we can set these rules, and then what happens is, whenever this kind of identification becomes now suppose your user visits from a website and logs in using a CRM ID. So because we have set an identifier in CDP to CRM, right? So it identifies it, and then it becomes to a customer. Now what happens is, the second rule which we have set, and suppose now same customer logs in using a Salesforce ID, right? And these rules, the main, I would say, the crux of CDP is these identification rules work using OR operator. So they are not AND combination. So whenever the user logs in using the Salesforce ID, so the same user gets mapped. Because it's an OR operator.
If it was AND operator, it would have been
created a different profile.
So there would have been three profiles in that case. One for CRM, one for Salesforce, and one for mix of both.
So that's the beauty of CDP. So all the identification rules works and using an OR operator.
Right.
And you can set up to maximum 5 identifications.
5 identification rules. Alright. So let's take a hypothetical case. Okay, I am anonymous. I am a visitor. I am coming through web. I am coming through mobile. So I have 2 visitor profiles, and then I identified myself, let's say, on web again on the third occasion, and then I logged in on my mobile as well. So then in that case, both those profiles will technically become one customer profile, and those 2 visitor profiles will be retired. Right?
Yep, exactly. So that's what, like, because you have the same identification, right?
Yes.
So all the data will get merged into a single data profile, and all those other profiles will get retired, and the data from the retired profile will move on to your new profile.
Okay, perfect. Now, moving ahead, let's say I am interacting with your website on a regular basis. I'm going through different pages, or in mobile application I'm doing some activity. How is that captured?
So like as a common use case, like we want to know like what kind of pages the users are visiting, right? So it can be like your product category pages, or product selector pages, or product shade pages, or something like that, right? And we want to know like what kind of pages the users are visiting more, so that we can do personalization on the basis of that, right? So there is a feature in like from Sitecore, whenever like you use integrate engage SDK, so there is a feature in which like you can send the data from your website to Sitecore CDP or Sitecore Personalize. So that data that would be sent from your website to Sitecore Personalize will be in the form of the interactions. So these will be kind of events or interactions, you can say, which will like identify the Sitecore CDP or Personalize to help like what kind of pages the users are visiting.
And then those interactions are basically again stored in
CDP.
Guest profile, in the customer profile.
So each guest can have like whenever, like, because each guest can have multiple sessions, and each sessions can then again have multiple events. So what happens is like whenever your anonymous visitor or any kind of visitor logs into your website, right? So as you worked on XP World, your session gets expired in 20 minutes, right? So it's the same here. So same here happens in CDP. So there's a point of sale,
right,
in which we configure the timeout of the session. So we ideally set it to 20 minutes to keep in sync with the XP, and then whatever happens in the 20 minutes, so all the data, it basically after 20 minutes it will create a new session, and the new session will then again have all the events which you will be sending from Sitecore Personalize to Sitecore CDP.
Right. Now, let's say for example, I have visited the website, let's say today in the morning, today in the afternoon, and today in the evening. Same day, right? So technically I'll have 3 sessions. And I'll have interactions done in those sessions, mapped in those particular sessions. So can I say from a hierarchy perspective or from a use case perspective, I have like customer is one too many for sessions, and again one too many for interactions.
Events.
So again, you said events and you said interactions. So I'm a little confused with those. So if I go to a page, it is an interaction technically, but it's an event as well, right? So you basically interaction. So event is a specification of an interaction. Can I say that?
Yeah, even a specification, like what kind of type. Like if you're visiting a landing page, so you can be sending a type as a landing page. If you're visiting any category pages, you can send the type as a category pages. So all those will be the events you will be set, and those events will sit under the umbrella of session.
Right.
So session will be an umbrella, and then we have multiple events in that session.
Okay, perfect. Now, if I have to look at one particular guest profile in detail, where do I go in CDP?
Yeah, so as you worked on XP World, right? So Sitecore has XP has experience profile, right? Where we can see all the guests and whatever kind of personas and all those stuff the user license. So similarly, whenever you log into the CDP, you have a unified view from guest as I told you earlier, and whenever you click onto any guest, there you will get a complete dashboard. So that complete dashboard will even tell you what time of day the users are coming, and what are the interactions he is performing, what are the kind of events he is doing, and which time of the day the user is more active. You will even get to know the user is visiting around, say, let's say 6 p.m. and then you can do some kind of personalizations around that time, because it's the evening time, and then you if you're like a KFC website, and then you can do some kind of offers according to that, because he's visiting your website around evening, and you can do some kind of
conversion.
Yeah, so that
kind of a conversion. So you can apply those kind of rules based on the timing. Yeah.
So you can identify that users are coming mostly that user is coming around evening, right? And that might be your website having some kind of KFC website or something, some evening snacks. Then you can provide some offers to them.
Now let's say this is a great example, because then I want to kind of club users or group users into such kind of properties. So how do I do that in CDP?
So as I told you, right? So guest can have the properties, right? Yeah. So in XP World also we have used to set using facets, and we have to store this data, right?
Yes,
personal information and all those. So these facets are mapped to data extensions in CDP.
Okay.
So data extensions are what is basically kind of properties, key value pairs. Okay, so basically if you're have your information about I would say email, first name, last name, phone number, all other data properties, right? Which our account have registration. If you are in the banking sector, you might have account numbers. If you are, there might be some cards. So all this data can be stored in CDP as a part of a data extension. And this data extension, the feature of data extension is that this data is persisted. So this data is never lost. Okay. Right. The data is every time it's there in CDP, and you can also view that data whenever you go into the guest profile. There is a dashboard, and there you can see all the data extensions which you clicked.
Okay, so let me just step back. So technically there are two type of things. Number one is your main guest profile, wherein you have the defined properties of a guest available, and then this data extensions is a place where you, based on your business case, can define your own properties and store the values as you want.
As a key value pairs.
As a key value pairs.
Because it cannot store nested objects, so you need to make sure it's a key value pairs. And if you want, you talked about clubbing, right? Clubbing similar kind of properties. So in that case, you can have a prefix. Suppose if you want to store similar kind of properties, so you can have a member as a prefix. So the member _ account number, member _ card number. So those will be a kind of prefix we need to provide, so to club the similar kind of properties.
Alright. So in that case, even I have some properties in my CRM which I want to use to give it to some users. I can maybe write some middlewares to pull those properties out, right, into CDP.
So as I told you, right? So Sitecore CDP has you can store the data extensions, and that data extensions can be stored from multiple platforms. So the Sitecore CDP provides batch APIs. So batch APIs, what the batch APIs do is you can send the data in amount I would say lakhs of 1 lakh or 2 lakhs, according to the guests in CDP, you can ingest them at one go. All the data will be ingested in the CDP using batch APIs, and then in this batch API, you can send the data extensions you would like to store with this guest, and then that data extensions will be then again mapped and then will be available in CDP.
Sure. So for the viewers who are not from India, 1 lakh means 100,000. So just for that note. Sure. All right. So now let's move on to the APIs in that case. You mentioned batch API. What are the other type of APIs, and what type of data can be managed by a given type of API?
Yeah. So basically, there are 3 kind of majorly APIs in the CDP when we work across. One is the stream APIs. The stream APIs are those like when you are sending your data from your website to the Sitecore CDP or Sitecore Personalized. So these are kind of events. Events or kind
basically
of
the interactions that you send out.
So interactions that we send out, these are the stream APIs from your website to the Sitecore CDP or Sitecore Personalized. So these are the kind of stream APIs. The second APIs are the REST APIs. So most of the platforms, like in order to send the stream APIs, you need to have integrated with Engage SDK, or even if you are using like JavaScript or jQuery, then you have a voxel. So you can use those JavaScript integration, but most of the website like mobile platform. When I talk about mobile platform, they can't integrate with JavaScript, or they cannot have their Engage library. So in that case, the feature of REST APIs can be leveraged. So REST APIs will do the same stuff which the stream APIs are doing. But then the REST APIs can be called from the mobile platform, and the data can be sent from mobile channel to the CDP, right? And the third is a batch APIs. The batch APIs can be used for large amount of data ingestion in CDP and to store all the data extensions, which I told you. So as a part of initial project, what we have done is we store all the guests in CDP as a part of batch APIs, and then we do the next kind of personalizations on those.
Correct, because then you with a batch API you get a good quantum of data available, so that then you can deal with the other items. All right, sweet. Okay, great. So then we have APIs, we have the data available or the guest profiles available. Here we have events and we have interactions. What next?
Yeah, so now you have set up the initial framework of your system, right? Because now guests are coming from different channels, you have set the events, you have set the guest data extensions. Now you want to know, right, what kind of activities are happening on my website, right? And you want to filter those audiences according to your criteria which your business or your marketing team has set up, right? Because your marketing team wants to if you have a banking sector, right? So they want to see you want to send a customized email to person whose account balance is something greater than some X amount or less than X amount, right? And they want to send an email to them. So what you can do is you can filter those kind of audiences in CDP, because you have now the data. Because the first criteria in CDP is to have the data. Once you have the data, then you can do some kind of business rules, or marketing can set up business rules to further categorize that data.
So what is that categorization called?
That categorization is called batch segmentation in CDP. So this batch segmentation helps us to filter the group of audience to satisfy a certain criteria that you have set up.
So these batch segmentations can take rules based on the guest or the customer profiles. It can also take rules based on the data extensions that are our business properties that we have. And do they take up things about sessions and events and all?
So whenever you work on batch segmentation, so you have 3 types. One is a guest, which can be customer anonymous. Then customer anonymous will have data extensions. Then another is a session. Okay, a session will have multiple events, and then you can do accordingly that whenever the event is this, then you want to segment that kind of users. And the third is the orders. So 3 kind of segment rules are there, category of segments rules are there. One is a guest, one is a session, third one is the event order.
Now, so technically I have guests, I have segmented them out. How do I send data out of CDP?
So now the most use cases, because the customer or the marketing team want to send this marketing email to this kind of users, right? And we can't just have this data segmented in CDP, and we want to utilize that data to be sent it to some external channels, and then utilize it to send some marketing campaigns. You can use different platforms such as EXM you can use to send those marketing email campaigns. But since you want to segment that data, segmentation is done. Now you want to send this data to any third party, which can be your EXM or something, any other Sitecore channel.
It could be your own CRM, it could be a Salesforce platform, anywhere you want.
Anywhere. So in that case, you can use audience export feature. So audience export basically connects to batch segment, right? So that when an audience export is connected to your batch segment, it will get all the audience within that batch segment. Suppose your batch segment satisfies around 10,000 or something around 100,000 users. So all the users in that batch segment will be sent using audience export feature to any other connection which you configure.
Okay.
So this connection can be configured to EXM or any other CRM you mentioned or any Salesforce channels. And this, like once you configure this connection from audience export to Sitecore segment, you can send the data. This will be received as a kind of a JSON file. This will be a JSON file and which will contain all the records,
right,
line by line. And this is basically a JSON record. Then you can deserialize that JSON and then read the marketing email from that record and then send a email to all those.
So basically, you can even have a marketing campaign based on that, and so let's say Sitecore send.
Yeah.
And then so those records that you have, based on that, you can create email lists and send them.
Send it. You can use Sitecore send connection. So basically, in CDP, we can create connection to any other REST APIs, and whether it's a Sitecore send, Sitecore EXM, or any kind of thing, we can make a connection and we can send the data from audience export.
A new thing which you brought up is connections.
Yeah.
So what are these connections basically used for?
So connections are basically used to connect from your Sitecore CDP or Sitecore CDP to another platform. So for example, you have some kind of REST APIs and you want to send the data, right, from your Sitecore CDP. So you can expose that data from your Sitecore CDP to the outside world using making connections. So these connections are available in the post format. You need to have a post type, and then you have to have some kind of payload body. So you need to send a payload body, and then the connection is made. And once the connection is made, you can connect this connection to this audience export. Then the audience export, whenever gets triggered, it will send the audience export can also be configured to trigger scheduled be 24 hours, or it can be sent instantaneously. So if we schedule it to run it each day 24 hours, it will send the data from audience export to that particular connection which we configure.
Right. Okay. So again, just stepping back and just understanding it for myself. So if I look at it from an architecture standpoint, we have stream, REST, and batch APIs to input the data.
Yeah.
Right. Then we have the guest profiles and all the properties of guests, interactions, sessions, everything managed in that particular platform.
Right.
Then we have segmentation coming in place, which can segregate users in different buckets or different personas. Right. And then when those personas are done, you have something called audience sync or audience export, which takes data out from CDP to any other external systems. Right. Now, this particular audience sync that we are saying, I think you just mentioned about scheduled.
Yeah.
So I'd like to understand more about the use cases. Where could a schedule be used and where could a direct send be used?
Yeah, sure. So whenever basically we have two kinds of requirement mainly. What we want to do is a full export, right? Where we want to send all the data daily, right? Whatever the criteria is satisfying, and then we want to send the data daily to any other connection which you have made. And the other kind of feature which in audience export provides a delta export.
Right.
So delta export is basically each day only the new records will be sent.
Okay.
That old records will not be sent. Only the new records which satisfies your condition now again on the next day will be sent to your third party.
Okay. Can I just step back? So what you're mentioning is, let's say today I have sent 100 records.
Yeah.
And it is, let's say at, can we schedule the time when to send it?
Yeah. So you can configure the whatever your zone, your Sitecore Cloud portal is. You can configure the timing, whatever 6 a.m. UTC or whatever 12 a.m. UTC. You can configure it. So whenever it runs, it will. If you configure it, it's to be run at the delta. So it will send only the new records that came across that day.
Perfect. Yeah. Which means those records, let's say yesterday at 6 a.m. in the morning, the export had run, and then from yesterday 6 a.m. to today 6 a.m., how many users have interacted?
Yeah, and satisfied that condition which you have set, only those users will be sent using the delta export.
Okay, perfect. Okay, this makes a lot of sense now. All right. Well, I think we are nearly at the end of it. But is there anything else from Sitecore CDP perspective you would like to add here?
So yeah, basically, as I told, right, Sitecore CDP, make sure as whenever you work on this, start your project, you have set your identity rules. So that's a major criteria where the challenges lies, and you face challenges whenever you want to do kind of personalizations, because identifications and the like identity rules are the first point which you need to make sure your project has.
That gets me to another question. I just mentioned that we are nearly ending it, but as a best practice, I mean, what if I get records in first and then try to change the identity rules?
No, you should not, because then like your old records will be like obsolete, right? And then you will need to delete that. So that's why like whenever like you have kind of doing any kind of data ingestion, so make sure like you set the identity rules at the first time, right? So that the data can be stored and managed according to that, and then the guest plot data can be unified also according to that, right? Otherwise you will have some stale records which are not useful to your Sitecore CDP.
Sure. Well, if a guest or if a customer for that matter has not interacted with my website for, I'll put it this way. Does my customer record, which is an identified customer, record stay in CDP forever?
Yeah.
It stays forever.
Yeah. So there are two criteria, right? If you store at the data extensions, right, it will be persistent. But if you store as a part of events of the session, so that has expired. So that data persists for 90 days, and only the last around like 60-90 sessions are keeping active till the last 90 days. So the events data is not persistent because, as I told, each guest can have multiple sessions and then each sessions can have multiple events, right?
Correct.
So that data persistent is for like 90 days for events. But yeah, for the data extensions, if you want to have kind of persistent data, you move it on to data extensions. But if you want to have some kind of personalizations according to last 3 month interactions, right, then you can store that data in the events.
Right. So I think it makes more sense that even if you cover or even if you have the event data and all coming in, you make sure that you're using data extensions.
Right.
Because if you want something like a build-up of a profile and then looking at a profile holistically, let's say for loyalty points or something like that,
exactly,
you cannot do it based on just events and interactions.
Exactly, because that data will be lost after 90 days.
After 90 days. Well, in that case, if as a customer, I did not go to a website which is having CDP implemented for let's say 6 months. Okay, I've been inactive. And after 6 months, I reappear in the website or re-log in and do some activity. Still, I will have the old data available if I've mapped it. I mean, from the implementation standpoint, if I have it in the data extensions, it will be available. And it will be just appended things to it.
Yeah, it will be a new event or session created in that same record. Same record which you have in the unified data platform.
Right. Well, that is it. And just an additional note to the community here. Sitecore CDP, of course, can be logged into separately, but with XM Cloud and all that, Sitecore portal is in place. The login can happen from a unified way that as well, which also helps the users. Eventually, I mean, from a management perspective, if your customer or if your partner has a Sitecore license for the portal and all, everything can be logged in through the same unified channel. Helps taking them. All right. Well, Chirag, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your knowledge on CDP with us. My dear family, hope it added more things to your bucket and hope it helped you understanding CDP better. Until the next episode, cheers.